COVID-19 has just, the world has changed forever. And during the course of COVID, I've decided to really figure out why the divide is so deep in this country. And I've always kind of known what the divide is, because as a white man in this country who grew up in a Republican county, who grew up in a very Republican household, who grew up in a very Republican just demographic, it's not a question of whether or not they're racist. It's a question of whether or not their constituents and the people that they're brainwashing know that they're being brainwashed hate. And that's what I want this documentary to show, is that it's not the constituents' faults. It's not the working man's fault. It is literally the fault of the elite Republican Party for doing what they've done for the last, I don't know, however long the Ku Klux Klan has been alive. Because when I tell you that all I did was research the Ku Klux Klan manifesto and compare it to the GOP platform, it's the same fucking thing. If you look at the similarities between the Republican Party, which was founded in 1854, and then the Ku Klux Klan, which was founded in 1865, and you start to think about how people who are really goal-oriented operate, if you're going to take the time to create a manifesto, and you're going to take the time to create a playbook, and those playbooks are similar, and if you look at society in 2020, and you look at the Ku Klux Klan manifesto and the GOP platform, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's time to wake up.
1925, the Ku Klux Klan was big business. Almost 6 million Americans now belonged to the Klan, and the organization was grossing $75 million a year. Some 40,000 Klansmen and Klanswomen crowded into Washington on August 8, 1925, to parade down Pennsylvania Avenue. To help the Klan coffers, a flag was used.
Every so often, society goes crazy, and the fringe elements of our community becomes mainstream. And that was never more apparent than in the 1920s, when the Ku Klux Klan took over politics in Colorado.
They spelled the state of Colorado with a K as opposed to a C. Everybody was determined by the Grand Dragon. The governor, the state senator, city mayor, police chief, the sheriff.
It was almost 100 years ago, and here we are again with a similar environment, politically and socially.
It is a cautionary tale. If we are not in denial of the power of the Klan in Colorado, we are better set up to be more honest about ourselves and who we are now.
No other race aborts their babies like the blacks do. That's a given fact. That's a stat. When Shaniqua wants to get pregnant and wants to kill and murder that baby, God says that's murder. Bad Shaniqua. Bad Shatangwa. Bad spatula. Whatever they choose to call themselves today, bad. Murder is evil in God's eyes. And besides that, all lives matter.
Strategist Lee Atwater was caught on tape explaining the Southern strategy.
In other words, you start out, now y'all aren't quoting me. You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger, that hurts you, backfires, so you say stuff like force busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you get so abstract now, you're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites.
You know, one of the things that I found really interesting during the course of my research is how bad it is. Because it may be too late. You know, as sad as much as I don't want that to be the case, just the realist in me is just this. I mean, they brainwashed the whole entire generation. Why do you think it's 50-50? It's 50% of the country believes in bad, 50% of the country believes in good. The only problem is the bad guys actually think they're doing good. Yeah. We're fucked. If you look at the Ku Klux Klan creed, it literally spells out the GOP's immigration policy. They are devoted to the pure Americanism principles of the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan is showing you that they recognize the relationship between this organization and the government. And they will never stop fighting for a pure America. What's even scarier about today's GOP and the Republican Party is literally that it is a verbatim playbook out of the Ku Klux Klan's vision of government. They want it to be patriotic, military, benevolent, ritualistic. They are literally taking the playbook of the Ku Klux Klan and applying it to 2020 policy. They are literally taking American citizens and brainwashing them to follow the ideologies of the Ku Klux Klan. That is why Republicans are racist. And they further prove it more with all their dog whistles. I mean, the invisible empire is truly the silent majority. I cannot believe that people still don't get that. There's not one Republican that I know where their ideology isn't based in some like where they know all superiority. And as I got older and just started just seeing people for what they were, I kind of have a hard time keeping my mouth shut, because how dare the Republican Party plagiarize the Ku Klux Klan handbook? Yeah. The Ku Klux Klan is one of those things, it's one of those organizations that I never really knew about them until I started to do research to figure out whether or not Republicans are racist. And I needed an anchor point. And if we can't all agree on the fact that the Ku Klux Klan is a racist hate group, then you're just delusional, and there's no need for you to sit at the grown-up table. Take your conspiracy coloring book and go sit at the kiddie table. What this documentary is going to prove is that not only is the Ku Klux Klan a billion-dollar organization today, it has infiltrated every aspect of our society. And if we don't think that racism is the number one driver of our economy, you're wrong. Racism is at the heart of everything right now in our country. And it's the Republicans' fault. And it's time we stop sharing blame between two parties, because what you're about to see is how democracy dies. It's time to wake up, America. If you really want to know why people are so divided, it's because people are not being taught the impact of racism or the severity of racism in this country. So when people who are suffering from racism or on the receiving end of racism try to talk about it, and the other perspective or the other viewpoint on racism doesn't believe that racism exists, it's very problematic. Because imagine that. Imagine living in a blatant racist society and then being told it's not racist. That's contentious right off the start. And the media is playing everybody against each other based on race. And they're hiding it as nationalism arguments or patriotism arguments. And now that we know that that is a straight playbook or a straight tactic from the Ku Klux Klan playbook, why are we not demanding it stop?
Have been way too long. You've heard of a push-pull, right? Well, it's used to get the answers you want by the way you frame the questions. An absurd new push-poll from the Associated Press purports to find 57% of Americans think President Trump is a racist. That includes more than 8 out of 10 African Americans, nearly 3/4 of Hispanics, and nearly 50% of whites. Let's bring in someone who knows a little bit about media manipulation, former Republican presidential candidate Herman Cain, and radio talk show host Garland Nixon. Haven't seen both of you in way too long. All right, let's get to this. Garland, let's start with you.
Okay.
First of all, I think if the poll is true, it's highly depressing to me. Okay, so that's number one. But given the fact that the economy really is doing better, we have the lowest black unemployment in 17 years. Lots of good indicators, a slightly higher graduation rate from high school, which is good, but he's been in office for 13 months. People's wages will start going up and we could bring these jobs back and so forth. You know, what's not to love?
Yeah, but that doesn't address the issue here at hand in this poll. Is Donald Trump a racist? And personally, I would say that term is far too restrictive for a guy who's exhibited the level of bigotry as Donald Trump. I think we have to use a broader term. I think bigotry works. Here's a guy, we all remember the insults to the handicap with the New York Times guy. He said that a Mexican judge was unable to dispense their duties simply because
he thought it was a conflict. I know how it sounded. No. He thought I know it came out that way, but I've known him for 13 years. I don't tolerate racism, don't like racism, wouldn't be friends with someone who's a racist. So I actually know him. He's not a racist. I'm just telling you, it's factually untrue to say he's a racist because I know him.
That's the only excuse you can say. I know him, and
because I actually have personal knowledge.
You know, I've looked into his soul or something like that.
No, I just
But
know
if you go by what he says, as the Tuna, the famous coach, said, you are what your record says you are.
Herman. Okay, you heard Garland says, you know, he's a racist.
Bigot.
Oh, bigot. It's not all encompassing. Go ahead.
Now, Mr. Nixon, please don't try to talk over me, which is what liberals do. He is not a racist, and you and others are concluding that he's a racist based upon your speculation from some statements that were made. You have no evidence, no results that suggest that he's a racist. Secondly, I, like Laura, I know Mr. Trump. I can spot racism 3,000 miles away, and he doesn't have a racist bone in his body based upon my own personal experience. But in that particular study that you were referencing, every incident identified is based upon speculating that he must have been saying something racist, when in fact, he was not saying anything racist.
Well, Republicans, it's 21% of Republicans think he's racist, according to this poll, which is shocking. Democrats, 85% Herman. Do you believe that 21% of Republicans think Donald Trump is racist? I mean, I don't know who these Republicans are, but I don't know if they belong to the Republican Party. I mean, it's crazy. To me, it's crazy. They can disagree with his policies, that's fine, or say he shouldn't tweet as much, that's fine.
Exactly.
But
disagree with the policies, yes, but you can't disagree with the results. Here's why you have such a high number of Democrats believing that he's racist, and you have a few Republicans. They are being told this. The liberal media and many Democrats have been using this false racist narrative ever since this president became president, and even before. And as a result, many of them are simply repeating what they have been told. This president is not racist.
Garland, one of the things that I think has perhaps stalled the advancement of African Americans in this new study that we don't have time to get into, but it's Economic Institute report about wages and unemployment from 1968 to 2017, is that we have tolerated millions of people coming into America who take jobs that working poor, middle-class people coming into the workplace for the first time used to have. And a lot of those jobs are gone now. Those entry-level jobs hurt, like a lot of the people that I came from and a lot of minorities. And they're not there anymore.
So here's what I would say.
And Trump is standing against them.
I would say that most of the black people in the community would disagree with you for this reason. And that is, black people are not looking for jobs picking grapes. They're not looking for jobs working in hotels. They want to be lawyers and doctors and policemen.
Of course they do.
I
picked fruit and I did paper routes and I worked in restaurants. And you never did those jobs? Those jobs taught me a lot.
But so black Americans want the same jobs as everyone else. They're not, but the black community is not blaming the guy at the bottom. They're blaming the people who make the decisions
we're
that
not
guide
blaming them
our
either.
economy.
We're blaming globalists who want to keep wages low for Americans. I'm not blaming those. I'm blaming the people who want to keep the wages down.
My point is that if anyone who is convinced by someone who has more money than they do, that the people that have less money than they do are the problem, are being manipulated.
Carmen, last word, real quick.
The manipulation is going on by liberals and Democrats. I see it every day. I hear it every day on my radio show. And by the way, Mr. Nixon, I'm part of the black community. I'm a radio talk show host. I like that job. I never dreamed that I would be able to achieve that job. But you want to know how I got it? I worked hard at it. I got it the old-fashioned way, probably the way you got yours. So these blanket statements about people not making a lot of money being told something about somebody that makes a lot of money, those are irrelevant comparisons.
All right, guys, great set.
Yeah, I mean, what you're going to see is just sales. All she's doing is selling. She's manipulating. She's using her voice and her rhetoric and her tone to convey a message to whoever's watching that what she is saying is true, and the people that she is introducing a certain way are better positioned to give the argument. So you watch how she introduces the poll with the results, and notice how she says absurd in such a way that whatever comes after it, it's just like, yeah, this is a joke. Like, why are we talking about this? And then on top of that, when she introduces Herman Cain, watch the title in which she gives him and then gives the other gentleman. And watch how she says media manipulation and the expert. She's deflecting. Okay? You are the media, Laura Ingraham. Okay? I don't know how people who watch her don't understand that you're watching the media. They are the media. They are all the same. Okay? Just because the corrupt media calls the corrupt media corrupt doesn't mean that the corrupt media isn't corrupt. Okay? Now, she is the devil. Like, because she is so good at it. She's very good at it.
All right. Well, it's used to get the answers you want by the way you frame the questions. An absurd new push poll from the Associated Press purports to find 57% of Americans think President Trump is a racist. That includes more than 8 out of 10 African Americans, nearly 3/4 of Hispanics, and nearly 50% of whites. Let's bring in someone who knows a little bit about media manipulation, former Republican presidential candidate Herman Cain, and radio talk show host Garland Nixon. Haven't seen both of you in way too long. All right, let's get to this. Garland, let's start with you.
Okay.
First of all, I think if the poll is true, it's highly depressing to me. Okay, so that's number one.
If the poll is true, it is highly depressing to me. Okay? So if you're a Republican or if you have any bias, your bias is now strengthened. Okay? And you're not informed. Okay? There's facts on the news, and she is literally telling you those facts are not good facts. Because you know those push-pull surveys, the people who actually filled out the surveys, they were the ones who got brainwashed by the media. And thankfully you're watching this show where we don't manipulate you and you're getting the truth. The truth from who? Oh, from me. Based on what facts? We can't get to those. We don't have enough time. She's very good at what she does. And it's dangerous to democracy.
But given the fact that the economy really is doing better, we have the lowest black unemployment in 17 years. Lots of good indicators, a slightly higher graduation rate from high school, which is good, but he's been in office for 13 months. People's wages will start going up, and we could bring these jobs back and so forth. You know, what's not to love?
Yeah, but that doesn't address the issue here at hand in this poll. Is Donald Trump a racist? And personally, I would say that term is far too restrictive for a guy who's exhibited the level of bigotry as Donald Trump. I think we have to use a broader term. I think bigotry works. Here's a guy, we all remember the insults to the handicap with the New York Times guy. He said that a Mexican judge was unable to dispense their duties simply because
he thought it was a conflict. I know how it sounded. No. He thought I know it came out that way, but I've known him for 13 years. I don't tolerate racism, don't like racism, wouldn't be friends with someone who's a racist. So I actually know him. He's not a racist. I'm just telling you, it's factually untrue to say he's a racist because I know him.
I mean, what was that? How do you even describe that? So he is laying down the smackdown on our president with facts. Just literally just being like, this is who he is as a man, this is what he's done. And she, a Republican news anchor, overspoke her guest. Why did she feel so comfortable to overspeak him? Okay? And notice how she overspoke him. Notice how she overspoke him. Because what you're going to see later on is Herman Cain do again another deflect technique, because he's another good salesperson, and watch how he says certain words in a certain way with a certain tone. So it's very important that we call this out for what it is, and it's propaganda and it's manipulation, okay? And it's having a serious negative impact on our unity as a country, because this is a conversation about racism, and she's doing the mental gymnastics that I tell you about, that she's just jumping from the reality world into, I know that what you're saying is factually not true, even though you have evidence and you're laying the evidence before me. My personal belief is you're wrong because I hang out with him and I know his heart and I know his soul. Well, let's pull the receipts, Laura Ingraham. You have a history of being a racist yourself, so I have no doubt that the both of you are racist, and it's disgusting to see this display of journalism. And you're very good at what you do, but people are going to start hearing about all the sales techniques that you're using because I know all of them. And I'm tired of you selling my friends and family hate disguised as nationalism.
It's the only excuse you can say. I know him, and
Well,
he's
I'm just because I actually have personal knowledge.
You know, I've looked into his soul or something like that.
No, I just
But
know
if you
him.
go by what he says, as the tuner, the famous coach said, you are what your record says you are.
Herman. Okay, you heard Garland says, you know, he's a racist. And
Bigot.
Just what,
Bigot.
Oh, bigot. It's not all encompassing. Go ahead.
Now, Mr. Nixon, please don't try to talk over me, which is what liberals do.
I mean, they're doing that because you're seeing it as the viewer. And then you're like, yeah, those liberals are, yeah, I can't believe they overtalk people all the time. And that's why civil discourse is broken down, because they're breaking it down and then they're saying the other side is doing it. We know that the Republicans would never vote for a Democrat, would never watch Democratic TV, would never associate with a Democrat on a political level. And it's because these sales professionals are manipulating our friends and family. And we just have to call it for what it is. Plain and simple. That's what it is.
He is not a racist, and you and others are concluding that he's a racist based upon your speculation from some statements that were made. You have no evidence, no results that suggest.
Statements are evidence. It came from the president's mouth. That is evidence. And he is saying that the evidence that we have, we're speculating into it. And that the facts that we have, come on, right? Don't you see it? I don't want to hear both sides' argument anymore. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. How? How can you tell me that this isn't poison?
That he's a racist. Secondly, I, like Laura, I know Mr. Trump. I can spot racism 3,000 miles away.
And it's shit like this that just infuriates me. So you get a guy to come on national television and say no facts other than your facts are garbage, and that my personal opinion trumps the evidence that you're presenting before us. Then on top of that, I can spot it 3,000 miles away. Like that's your expertise because you just got a good eye for it. Well, I got a good eye for a bullshitter, and it's right there.
Hi, Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities, the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and trying to be responsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country. Plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
That video you just watched is because of the Sinclair Group. The Sinclair Group is a pro-Trump company that is dominating local news throughout America. They have now reached over 72% of American citizens. When Donald Trump tweets out against the fake news, he is doing that to soften the ground so that people don't trust facts anymore. That is dangerous to democracy, and his threats of taking away media credentials is even worse. What the Republican Party continues to show is that they will go to no lengths to win. They now want to overthrow the Fairness Doctrine and the McCain-Feingold Doctrine in the name of free speech, when people don't even realize that those laws that are put in place by our ancestors during the creation of radio and television were designed to protect Americans from being fed misinformation. And now the Republicans are coming in and saying that they want no regulation on free speech. They literally are trying to make the argument that it is their right to lie to the American people. You now just saw how many news stations the conservative Republican Party has control over. You now see that Donald Trump is brainwashing his followers into thinking that anything that doesn't come from his Twitter feed is fake news. This guy is a danger to democracy, and people need to wake up. He's not an idiot. This playbook has been intact for centuries. The Ku Klux Klan is literally designing a playbook to destroy the America that believes in multiculturalism, and it's happening right in front of us. And everybody is fighting over immigration when it's all a design for white supremacy. I knew right away when I read the section on the emperor. The emperor, I think it was like the emperor of his invisible empire, his duties and his privileges. Oh yeah, I mean, these monuments that we're talking about, they're literally, the KKK is literally saying to build these monuments and to literally create symbolism and to create paraphernalia to spread their hateful ideology. Like, it's in their playbook. And then to watch Republicans defend the statues of Confederates. And it's asinine to me, because it's literally in the emperor of the invisible empire. And they say that the emperor has all complete control. So they're not wearing white hoods anymore. You know what they're wearing? Red hats. If you look at the Ku Klux Klan handbook, and then you look at Donald Trump's Make America Great Again marketing strategy, it's from the Grand Wizard playbook itself.
went out this morning and found KKK propaganda flyers right there laying on the street and on the sidewalk. WMAR 2's Abby Isaac was in Federal Hill tonight, and she talked with some of the people who found these flyers.
I saw a little baggie on the ground and I picked it up.
Neighbors across Federal Hill made shocking discoveries outside their homes Sunday night.
I was out walking our dog and I happened to look on the ground and saw one and then actually several.
They found dozens of KKK propaganda flyers in baggies, weighed down with rock salt, seemingly placed randomly down streets like Battery and Riverside Avenues.
I think that one of our neighbors contacted the police with as many as 25.
Some turned them into police, others threw them away.
I don't want them in my neighborhood. I don't want them in any neighborhood.
Neighbors believe the locations were picked on purpose, areas already on edge.
We saw these populated over on Riverside after there was a shooting this summer. We had an incident here on this block within the past 2 to 3 weeks, and it really does seem to be targeted to people and really preying on their emotions.
They were also distributed at the beginning of Black History Month, and these flyers spread a message of hate about Martin Luther King Jr. But now neighbors are spreading a message of their own.
They are certainly within their right, perhaps, to express their opinions, but we, on the other hand, have an equal right to push back and to express our displeasure and to let them know there's no place in this neighborhood for that. I think that the neighborhood should organize against it. I think power in numbers is always the way to do it.
I think the scariest thing about Donald Trump naming Antifa a terrorist organization is now anybody who does not agree with the right or the Republican Party or the rise of racism is deemed a terrorist and could lose their livelihood and can lose their life and can lose their liberty and can lose their justice. How is this the land of the free? When the President of the United States, when there's race riots going on all across the country, and he's stoking the flames of racial division by saying when the looting starts, the shooting starts, which is a segregationist sentiment from George Wallace, a known Klansman. And then you have the President of the United States spewing the same hateful bigotry. Come on now, folks. People are going to rise to the occasion. And if you don't think for a second it's all by design, because guess what? The prisons still are getting built. It is $1 billion industry. So nothing like when the economy tanks and you got 47% of the population not working, nothing better than creating racial division, race riots, convincing the public that these people need to be in jail. All in all they're doing is trying to stop the hate and the bigotry being spewed in this country on every street corner. Because every time a Trump rally comes into town, the bigots come out and the hate gets louder. So when you label a group called anti-fascists a terrorist organization while the KKK roams free, and then the KKK playbook has such disdain for liberalism and has such disdain for anybody who doesn't agree with them, that when I see the actions of the 2020 GOP Republican Party, and I look and I see the tape of the racist bigotry that's being spewed, and then they have the audacity to say there's both sides to blame, that there's bad actors on both sides, miss me with it. Miss me with it. I'm not even going to pay attention to you. It's the dumbest argument I've ever heard.
There's very little police presence. There's a group of anti-demonstrators. They're completely surrounded inside the group of torchlit demonstrators. It looks like we got a fight. There's definitely a fight inside.
You're variously lost and so who you.
I thought it was disgusting that a bunch of American vets with weapons are out protecting a bunch of Nazis. My granddaddy fought the Nazis in World War II.
CBS Reports presents The Ku Klux Klan, The Invisible Empire. Here is CBS News correspondent Charles Kuralt.
Good evening. The Ku Klux Klan is a secret organization which for 100 years has been allowed to exist in this country. Virtually every president of the United States in the past century has said the Klan has little regard for constituted authority. President Johnson, following the murder of Mrs. Liuzzo in Alabama, defined the Ku Klux Klan as a hooded society of bigots and warned Klansmen to get out of the Klan and return to a decent society before it is too late. After the president's warning, the House Un-American Activities Committee started a full-scale investigation of the Klan, and open hearings are scheduled for next month.
Another reason why Republicans are racist is because when somebody shows you who they are and you willfully put your head in the sand and act like what just happened didn't happen, we're not going to tolerate your intolerance anymore. And watch our president of the United States, our commander-in-chief. This is not normal Donald Trump. He's a powerful man. You're not going to see powerful men whimper and cower like normal men would, what you're normally used to seeing. What you're going to see is a grown man in his 70s show fear. And why? Why is he showing fear?
Will you unequivocally condemn David Duke and say that you don't want his vote or that of other white supremacists in this election?
Well, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know, did he endorse me or what's going on? Because, I know nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacists. And so you're asking me a question that I'm supposed to be talking about people that I know nothing about.
But I guess the question from the Anti-Defamation League is, even if you don't know about their endorsement, there are these groups and individuals endorsing you. Would you just say unequivocally you condemn them and you don't want their support?
Well, I have to look at the group. I mean, I don't know what group you're talking about. You wouldn't want me to condemn a group that I know nothing about. I'd have to look. If you would send me a list of the groups, I will do research on them, and certainly I would disavow if I thought there was something wrong. But you may have groups in there that are totally fine, and it would be very unfair. So give me a list of the groups, and I'll let you know.
Okay. I mean, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here, but...
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know David Duke. I don't believe I've ever met him. I'm pretty sure I didn't meet him, and I just don't know anything about him.
I don't think for a second Donald Trump had a problem disavowing David Duke. I think what scared him and what really questioned his morals, like in his heart, was to denounce the KKK. Notice how he kept the topic on David Duke. Notice how he just kept saying David Duke. I don't know who David Duke is, and he wouldn't go to condemn the KKK. I think Donald Trump, I can't believe I'm saying this because it's going to sound like a conspiracy theory, but when there's evidence to support it, is it a theory or is it a fact? And that's what I can't wrap my head around. And to say what I'm about to say is, it feels crazy, but with the evidence, I just have to say it. And I think Donald Trump is the head of the KKK. I just have to say it. I think he's the head of the KKK. Or not the head. Not the head. But I think he's the head figurehead. And if he goes against the Klan, like the top upper echelon, like the board of the Klan, then I think he knows you'll get fired. And Donnie don't want that. That might be a stretch, but we'll look at the evidence.
It's a lot easier to act presidential than to do what I do. Anybody can act president. Ladies and gentlemen of the state of Florida, thank you very much for being here. You are tremendous people. And I will leave now because I am boring you to death. Thank you. No, but I said, I used to tell them all the time, the fake news, I'd say, I can be more presidential than any president in history, except for possibly Abe Lincoln with a big hat. I don't know. Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. We are a nation founded on the truth that all of us are created equal. We are equal in the eyes of our Creator. We are equal under the law.
Our culture is quickly exposing themselves for, quite frankly, the bigots that we are still, because how can you sit there and say for 8 years you tarnish President Barack Obama for every press conference, for every suit, for every golf event, for everything this man did? You criticized him with such aggression, as if this guy was truly ripping up the Constitution and wiping his ass with it. And I saw it every day, and it made me not want to vote. It made me not want to participate. It made me just totally check out of the entire, political, process. And now I realize that was by design, because if you're going to tolerate a president being like, I can act presidential, I got a rule for you, man. If you can't be presidential, don't be president. Like, what's so hard about that? Because now the African American community that has been on the receiving end of the brutality of the KKK and has gone through Jim Crow and has gone through segregation and has gone through lynching and has gone through slavery, to watch your president not be able to not condemn the organization who's responsible for that, how can you side with him? How can you side with the president? The only way to do that is to have hate in your heart and to be a bigot and to be a racist. It's the only way. It's the only way.
I'm living in a culture, and I have to live within the culture. So that's the way it is. That's all. I got it. I got the whole message. You live with your heart.
I don't.
You can't be flexible. You can't.
I am flexible. I understand that that's the way you were raised and that's your culture, and I'm respectful and respectful.
Why do you have to disrespect them? Those are.
Who am I disrespecting?
The world before you.
He happens to be black, and I'm sorry.
I think it's nice that you admire him. I know him well, and he should be admired. And I'm just saying that it's too bad you can't admire him privately and during your entire life, your whole life, admire him. Bring him here, feed him, him. I don't care. You can do anything, but don't put him on an Instagram so the world has to see, so they have to call me.
I remember when the Donald Sterling tape came out, and I remember how proud I was of everyone's response, and I was like, yeah, get this guy out of the league. And that was it. Like, I was like, good, they did their job, like, whatever. And then when I was doing this documentary and I was looking for evidence to support, my theory, the words are chilling now more than ever, because Donald Sterling was a billionaire, or is a billionaire. And a lot of people gave him a cop-out because he's old and he's senile and yeah, whatever. But when you're a billionaire, you get to see the world. You know what I'm saying? I haven't gotten to see the world yet because I'm not a billionaire. And when a billionaire tells you that the world is a certain way, I don't care who people who've never met with him, never hung out with him, don't actually know his inner circle. We don't know, we've never been there. So we have to take words for value. And it's chilling to think a billionaire who's seen the world is letting us have a little bit of a preview as to what people in his circle think about the world. We're in trouble.
4 Los Angeles policemen already indicted in the Rodney King beating. The county grand jury signaled that will be the extent of the criminal case. 17 other so-called police bystanders at the beating scene will not be indicted. Development noted.
Is it a benefit to me? Does it matter if they're white or blue or yellow?
I guess that you don't know that. Maybe you're stupid. Maybe you don't know what people think of you. It does matter, yeah. It matters.
What do I think is the scariest thing about the KKK? I think it's their ability to hide. Like, people genuinely think that the KKK is a bunch of sloppy, like, Southerners wearing hoods on their head. No. This was a well-y organized, crafted terrorist organization that had a goal on infiltrating our political, our political spectrum, as well as also infiltrating our institutions. And in the early 1900s, there was millions of them. And to think that within a century that they're gone, that their blood, their ideology is gone. No, just because we don't talk about it doesn't mean that they're gone. And since we don't talk about it, they've gained ground. And if you don't believe me, Donald Sterling was what? One guy who slipped up? I mean, they used to hold, the pretty much Nazi rallies in Madison Square Garden. Are you kidding me? This is why history is important.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Americans, American patriots, I'm sure I do not come before you tonight as a complete stranger. You all have heard of me through the Jewish-controlled press as a creature with horns, a cloven hoof, and a long tail. We, with American ideals, demand that our government shall be returned to the American people who founded it.
I think the thing that really grinds my gears about, 2020 racism is people, I don't know if they're intentionally, at this point, like, you're intentionally being antagonistic and being a jerk because you really think that there needs to be a quid pro quo on everything. Notice how we never really said quid pro quo before Donald Trump came part of, like, our culture from, of commander-in-chief, president of the free world type of standpoint. It's alarming how many people that I know that are reading this garbage and they're creating an intellectual argument to their bigotry, and there's some truth into it. There is. So it gives it a gap, like a little hedgeway. But you have to think long term about the ideology, and if you really walk through the ideology, if you really get to the end of the ideology, it leads in genocide, and it leads in violence. And there's a reason why we fought wars over this type of ideology. And it's crazy to me that it's here on American soil, and that this ideology is shared by thousands, if not millions, of Americans. You're not going to hear the N-word from a Klan member. You're not going to see what you're expected to see from the KKK. They are not. You think Donald Sterling is hanging out in the woods with a robe on his head?
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's the future? And I was like, well, I was trying to be like a Southern nationalist. I was like, well, I believe that like white people, if we reject this multicultural nation, should be able to secede and then come together to create our own country.
Yeah.
And then as I was walking away, I was like, I just advocated white separatism. That's kind of a step. And now that I've kind of crossed that bridge, I might as well just own it.
Yeah,
So
that's good. But it's kind of what I'm talking about, actually. Well, my talk is really anti-conservative. It's we need to get away from the conservative movement. They don't like us. They're never going to help us. They're never going to do anything for us. We don't agree with them. We're not conservative. No. We're maybe even antithetical. Really. I mean, it's just kind of. I never was really like them. I think I was always a kind of Nietzschean, before I knew how to spell that word. Even when I was a freshman, I was like reading, I really got into Shakespeare when I was in college, and I really loved the tragedy. So I kind of had a different, I was anti-liberal.
Right.
And I think instinctually, but at the same time, when I was when I was your age, I didn't like to talk about race because it just kind of felt, it was kind of yucky. It was like only dumb people do that.
Right.
Only bigots do that. I want to be above this, some kind of thing like that.
Right.
And it was actually reading Jared Taylor that. So I kind of really came to it with, I am right. And now I'm here.
Now you're an honored guest.
Yes.
It doesn't say it. Rebel is under attack. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. Montgomery Rebel is under attack. What do we do? Stand up, fight back.
Would people be allowed to date outside of their race in this world, breed with each other, produce interracial babies?
It would be discouraged.
It would be discouraged. Why is that?
Well, because we want to conserve uniqueness. I don't want to destroy ethnicity. I don't think anyone at MRAN wants to create a homogeneous white population where everyone's identical. I think we're actually in a much better position to preserve ethnicity, if that actually is what you care about. I think we are much more sympathetic towards letting the Irish be the Irish.
Let me clarify. I'm only arguing that there's no such thing as race. It's a social fiction. I'm not arguing that any kind of ethnic division or is good or not good. I'm arguing that you all represent an antiquated and totalitarian belief system that has no place in the 21st century. I think you're a relic, and you have to come to terms with that and accept it. I'm just here to ease you through that process.
It's okay to hold up a sign that
you guys are the
says
future.
It's okay to wipe out.
All of us have a duty to our ancestors and an obligation to our children, and that is to keep fighting. We have no choice. I have no choice. You have no choice. Thank you very much.
I imagine my remarks today might displease some, but they are words that need to be said. For as long as anyone can remember, immigration has been the chief political concern at gatherings like this. In the summer of 2011, the Census Bureau reported that the majority of children born in the United States are non-white. Thus, from our perspective, any further immigration restriction efforts are essentially meaningless. But what can we do now to begin to set a new and different course for our movement and also our civilization? We need an ideal. And as ideals go, sometimes the more impossible, the better. The ideal I will put forward is the creation of a white ethno-state on the North American continent. it would not just be a home for white people in America, but could be a home base for all Germans, Latins, and Slavs all over the world. We need an ethno-state so that our people can come home again, can live amongst family, and though it might sound banal, be happy and comfortable. But we also need an ethno-state for greater things, so that the white man can reach the stars. Before the onset of the democracy and equality phase, whites had a unique ability to risk everything for ends that are superhuman. We must give up the false dream of equalizing all races, not so that we can wake up to reality, because reality isn't expiring, but that we can take up a new dream of channeling our interest towards the exploration of space, or the fostering of white people who are healthier, stronger, more beautiful, more intelligent, to the point that they can rival the ancients. To quote again from Herzl, who was referring to his then utopian Jewish state in Palestine, "If you wish it, it is no fairy tale. If you don't wish it, it is a fairy tale and will remain one." Or, to quote from another famous historical figure, "I have a dream." Thank you.
Very much like to thank you.
Oh, gosh. Well, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to do it.
That's true.
And I'm getting old, so it's your generation got to take it.
We're coming. We will step up to the plate. I do promise you. The fact that you've created all of this, you've created it for me.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
and my kid, though, I've got a 3-year-old son. And then, so what you've made about the information that you've made available to me, I will then make available to my son. And we will have an intergenerational continuance of this knowledge.
That's right. That's what's absolutely necessary.
Thank you.
Well, great.
All right. Thank you, sir. I very much appreciate it. So in the KKK handbook, in the playbook, it talks about these cardinal coolers where they have to wear these specific colors, and that it's important to the mystery of the invisible empire that certain creeds and mottos and colors of uniform get traditionally passed down, so that you can kind of like show that you're there, but you're still flying under the radar. Like, it's kind of that gray area. Like, are you thinking too far into a conspiracy theory, or are you onto something? And they love living in that realm of mystic. They call it a mystic realm, and they love the fact that does the KKK exist? Do they not exist? But when you look at what they were designed to do, and they were designed to essentially do the same thing we say our police officers are designed to do. And you can get mad at me for connecting the dots, but that's all I'm doing. You take the KKK manifesto, and you look at their rituals, and you look at their creeds, and you look at their mottos, and then you look at the GOPs, and then you look at the GOP institutions. What are we supposed to do? Ignore what was written and ignore what we see?
outside? Police have not stepped in. Can I ask why you guys aren't stepping in? Okay, I'm just wondering why you guys haven't intervened yet.
When such an order as this moves in and takes over the police power, you are completely at their mercy. And their atrocities and their violence can be visited on anybody that disagrees with them in any given situation.
Of the criminal case. 17 other so-called police bystanders at the beating scene will not be indicted. Development.
I thought it was disgusting that a bunch of American vets with weapons are out protecting a bunch of Nazis. My granddaddy fought the Nazis in World War II. Yeah, the Nazis were protected by these patriot militias with weapons.
That's what group you guys are with?
I mean, when I see
when I see a Blue Lives Matter badge defending neo-Nazi KKK extremists, and then I know the history of the KKK infiltrating the police departments all across this country, and then we see the senseless brutality. You got 70-year-old men just getting knocked over by these brutes. And then you have the President of the United States saying that he could possibly have a scanner jammer, and it was justified, and that Antifa is radical, while you have police officers arresting journalists on live television. You have police officers arresting journalists on live television. You have militarized police shooting tear gas and stun grenades while peaceful protesters gather on a park corner in America, and the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, the Grand fucking Wizard himself, is convincing the American people that they are more American than anybody else. And that is literally the fucking Ku Klux Klan playbook. And they have the police, they have the military, and they have the public sentiment believing that their ideology is what's best for America.
It's a matter of changing our values. I think if we change our values, if we realize racial, ethnic, and religious diversity in a political system actually creates a very hostile atmosphere, then I think we'll start moving towards policies that begin to move us away from that. This mantra of diversity is our greatest strength. You'll hear just about everyone on the political spectrum say that. Perhaps up until maybe, I can't think of a time Donald Trump said that. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. And maybe that's the reason why there is so much angst and anger against him, is because he hasn't paid, proper reverence to really the religion of our time. And that's diversity. Yes, the idea that diversity is an endless good in and of itself and that it should never be critiqued. That is cult-like behavior.
Immigration is not popular. And if you actually look at some things about Donald Trump, the proposed Muslim ban and so on, those coincided with these spikes in popularity. Trump has proven the power of these ideas.
Prior to 1965, America actually had immigration policies that were set in place to maintain the racial and cultural balance of the country. In 1965, they passed the Hart-Celler Act, and when that act was passed, the legislators who passed it claimed that the act would not change the racial or ethnic diversity of the country, and that it wouldn't change the amount of immigrants coming into the country every year. And that was actually completely false. We started seeing immigration from non-traditional nations, of people of different other races, other religions, other cultures, non-traditional nations from demographic backgrounds that actually, in many cases, have a much harder time assimilating, and in many cases just simply can't, as a group, assimilate. And so, we have people who've been here for hundreds of years, people of African heritage who have not fully assimilated into the American society, or people of European heritage have assimilated to them.
Of course, it's an annual event, and we cover you guys every year because people get all riled up when you come.
They get so riled up. All we want to do is get together and talk. I don't know why it so excites them, but it seems to do.
Why do you come to Tennessee, and specifically to Montgomery-Bell State Park?
Tennessee is a beautiful state. And as I said earlier, sometimes in the past when we've dealt with private hotel owners, they have succumbed to pressure to break their contracts with us. But the state of Tennessee, they just shrug off that kind of thing. So we appreciate very much their willingness to help us exercise our First Amendment rights.
The people have said a lot of awful things about you.
Yes, they routinely say awful things about me.
Racist.
White supremacists, that's their favorite. White supremacists, they just love that.
What are you? Is that true?
Absolutely not. I don't even know what a white supremacist would be. It seems to me calling somebody a white supremacist is like calling somebody a Dukakis supporter. There just aren't any of them around anymore. All you have to do to be accused of white supremacy is to say that you simply prefer the company of people like yourself. I prefer European civilization. I prefer to live in an area that is majority white or European, if you will. And that's all it takes. Oh, bam, you're a Nazi, you're a hater, you're a bad guy. All you're doing is expressing a preference that is perfectly natural, normal, and healthy. Why is it that whites should be happy about an immigration process that is reducing us to a minority? Why should we be celebrating diversity if celebrating diversity means celebrating our reduced numbers and dwindling influence?
All right, last question. What is it that you most want people to know that you do stand for and not stand against?
We think that most people prefer the company of people like themselves, and that it's a mistake to try to push people together when their preference would be to be apart. Now, for those who wish to mix up, live a diverse life, there aren't that very many of them, but God bless them. But for those who wish to be amongst their own tribe and enjoy their own culture and let their own destiny unfold, we should not stand in their way.
Diversity is our strength. It'll be in our currency before long, trust me, in class. When he explained, so why are we doing this? Because it's our moral duty. That's what our leaders are telling us. We have to. That's who we are. Just days ago, the Senate's most celebrated moral philosopher, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, spoke for the country's entire ruling class when he explained the rationale for his views on immigration. Diversity is our strength. Now, you've heard that phrase before, obviously. You hear it every day. In effect, it's our new national motto, soon to replace the outdated and, in fact, polar opposite sentiment, e pluribus unum. Diversity is our strength. It'll be in our currency before long, trust me. But what exactly does it mean? You may have noticed that nobody ever bothers to explain exactly what it means. And more pressingly, is it true? The less we have in common, the stronger we are? Is a marriage stronger when spouses have radically different beliefs? Are you closer to your kids when you share no common points of reference? Do you speak the same language as your best friend? Could you be best friends if you didn't? These are important questions, given that our leaders are radically and permanently changing our country wholly on the basis of their faith that diversity is, in fact, our strength. Maybe we should have talked this through ahead of time. Somehow we didn't. House Majority...
But God bless them. But for those who wish to be amongst their own tribe and enjoy their own culture and let their own destiny unfold, we should not stand in their way.
Diversity is our strength. It'll be in our currency before long, trust me, in class. When he explained, so why are we doing this? Because it's our moral duty. That's what our leaders are telling it.
You see how he said moral there? Moral duty? Like sarcasm? Like, it's our moral duty. It's our moral duty. Push and pull again. How you say things, the mannerisms in which you deliver them with, all matter. And Tucker Carlson is a G. Why do you think he's the most watched news host? You think it's because of what he's saying is fucking true? You think it's good? You think it's good news? Let's watch good news.
Yes, we have to. That's who we are. Just days ago, the Senate's most celebrated moral philosopher, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, spoke for the country's entire ruling class when he explained the rationale for his view.
Spoke for the entire ruling class? Newsflash: Tucker Carlson is the fucking ruling class. Are you kidding me? Are okay? First, Laura Ingram's saying that media is like they're not the media. Now he's saying that they're not the ruling class. Again, creating this hierarchy, this division. They are the enemy. Me, your white horse, your knight in shining armor. Riding in a white horse, I'm the man. That's everything that they do in their news cycle. Is Fox News hosts are the fucking saviors. They're the men's men. Listen to us. These fucking idiots are idiots. Listen to us. We're Fox News.
Views on immigration. Diversity is our strength.
Diversity is our strength. You know how insulting that is? Look at our country.
Look at our country. We are a multicultural country. And this fucking ass clown is sitting there arrogantly saying, diversity is our strength.
Now, you've heard that phrase before, obviously. You hear it every day. In effect, it's our new national motto, soon to replace the outdated and, in fact, polar opposite sentiment, e pluribus unum. Diversity is our strength. It'll be in our currency before long, trust me.
How many times is he going to say diversity is our strength? He's trying to get into your subconscious that diversity is not our strength. Diversity is not our strength. How many times does he have to repeat something? He's socially conditioning you. Because what's going to come up later on in this segment is he's going to tell you how you should feel. And then brainwash complete. Watch.
But what exactly does it mean? You may have noticed that nobody ever bothers to explain exactly what it means. And more pressingly, is it true? The less we have in common, the stronger we are? Is a marriage stronger when spouses have radically different beliefs?
Would they get married if they did? It's all about how you phrase the question. Would two people who have nothing in common even be getting married?
Are you closer to your kids when you share no common points of reference?
Do you have to have something in common with your kids to love them, to have movie night, to have dinner with them, to be a good fucking parent to your kids? You need something in common to be a good parent to your kids. You are in charge of your family. You need to have the same interests? No, your kids aren't going to be mini yous. Let them be themselves.
Do you speak the same language as your best friend? Could you be better?
No, my best friend's Spanish. Are you kidding me? He learned English, okay? Maybe if we all learned 2 languages and we weren't the only fucking country who only knew one, it's all about how you phrase the question in the argument. This guy is literally telling you that diversity is stupid and that these are the examples that he's giving you. And you're like, yeah, those are good arguments. That's a good point, Tucker.
Best friends if you didn't? These are important questions, given that our leaders are radically and permanently changing our country.
First and foremost, the Naturalization Act of 1965, our grandfather's generation, okay, the greatest generation ever, okay, they already understood what needed to happen in this country. That's why it's on the books. This is what I can't stand about the conservative ideology. All you do is go back in time and find progressive legislation that made this country better, and you want to overturn it. That's fucking stupid.
Wholly on the basis of their faith that diversity is, in fact, our strength.
Diversity is our strength. It's our fucking strength. Because you want to know what? We all look the same when we don't care about each other's skin color. But these ass clowns say they don't care about color, say they don't care about race, say they don't care about skin. And then everything they fucking talk about is dripping in identity politics, is scorched earth with these fucking idiots. Okay? They are making an eloquent argument for bigotry. Diversity is our strength, no matter how much these racist Klansmen say that it's not. Think about it. If diversity was a weakness, how the fuck did we get here? How did we win World War I, World War II? How did the immigrants who built this country, are you kidding me? How do they think they feel when they hear shit like this? I'm an Irishman of Irish descent. I'm also an Italian descent. All of us from America come from somewhere else. We used to be proud of that. So why are we all of a sudden ashamed of it? It's because the KKK. It's because the Ku Klux Klan. It's in their playbook. They do not like multiculturalism. They do not like diversity. It's called white supremacy.
We should have talked this through ahead of time. Somehow we didn't.
We did, and we even went to war over people who have ideologies like that. And we won, and we'll win again.
House Majority Leader Kevin House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy tried to start that conversation today, and here's part of what he said.
We did not survive, grow, and become the most powerful civilization in human history because we are focused on our diversity. It is not our differences that makes us stronger. It is our unity despite our diversity. Unity in past, of principles, and of the purpose that brought us out of many unto one.
In other words, diversity isn't our strength. Unity is our strength. Don't the left lie to you. That doesn't mean we have to look alike. Doesn't mean we have to come from the same places. It does mean we have to share common beliefs. Otherwise, we'll hate each other and the whole enterprise will fall apart. That's true in families, it's true in friendships, and it's true in countries too. You already knew that because it's obvious. Our leaders spend most of their time denying it. They're lying to us. Today, and here's part of what he said.
We did not survive, grow, and become the most powerful civilization in human history because we were focused on our diversity.
Then how did we become the #1 fucking superpower in the world if it wasn't for our diversity? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're gonna make an asinine statement like that? Does anybody have any fucking idea the amount of entrepreneurs that are in this country that are from immigrants that have literally been the juggernauts of our American economy is through immigrants? Do you know how many wars have been fought by Hispanics and African Americans and Asian Americans? Like, you ignorant son of a bitch, Kevin McCarthy. And you douche pickle fucking Tucker Carlson. You're literally going to sit there and broadcast to millions of Americans that America didn't get to this point in history through our diversity. You're just pieces of shit. Because you know it's true. You know we got here because of our fucking diversity. And I can't wait till we kick your fucking ass in World War III.
It is not our differences that makes us stronger. It is our unity despite our diversity.
It's our unity despite our diversity? What are we uniting around?
Unity in past, of principles, and of the purpose that brought us.
Past principles. What was our principles, Kevin? It's not the Ku Klux Klan principles, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the words on the Statue of Liberty. There was Americans who lived before our generation, and they set the standard of America, and they told us what America was going to be. It was our job to take the torch and run forward with it, not fucking toss it backwards. Diversity is our strength.
Out of many unto one.
In other words, diversity isn't our strength. Unity is our strength. Don't the left lie to you. That doesn't mean we have to.
Don't let the left lie to you. The right is lying to you right now.
To look alike. Doesn't mean we have to come from the same places. It does mean we have to share common beliefs. Otherwise, we'll hate each other and
What's the common beliefs we share, Tucker? That we don't fucking see color, right? Yet you guys bathe in the identity politics pool. You're hypocrites, you're bigots, and you're about to get exposed.
the whole enterprise will fall apart. That's true in families, it's true in friendships, and it's true in countries too. You already knew that because it's obvious. Our leaders spend most of their time denying it. They're lying to us.
What he just did right there was complete manipulation and total push-pull. That whole entire segment. And the greatest thing about that entire segment is they had a legal alien up the whole entire time. That is language from the Ku Klux Klan playbook. So when Tucker Carlson sits there and tells you that America is under attack from the radical left and the mob mentality that is liberalism, and that diversity is stupid, and that there's no way it could be our strength, and that we will call you racist to hear that bigotry. The end game of your ideology and everything you just heard right there is that you're either with us or you're against us. And that is not fucking unity. That is dictatorship. Second paragraph down, it says, "We shall be ever devoted to the sublime principle of a pure Americanism, and valiant in the defense of its ideals and its institutions. We avow the distinction between the races of mankind as decreed by the Creator, and we shall ever be true to the maintenance of white supremacy, and strenuously oppose any compromise thereof. That is what Tucker Carlson and Kevin McCarthy were vouching for. Not only was their news segment filled with lies, you can see here in the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, we already dealt with this. And just to further illustrate and prove how racist and stupid Tucker Carlson was in that segment, the motto that they're referring to and how it's under attack and America is being, lied to about diversity, the motto was created by an immigrant, and he was definitely not white, so there's that.
Why do you need a safe space?
Why do Jews need a
safe space?
All people.
I am so fucking mad at these people. They don't do this to fucking me. We're coming back here like a fucking 100 times. I am so mad. I am so fucking mad at these people. They don't do this to fucking me. We're gonna fucking ritualistically humiliate them. I am coming back here every fucking weekend if I have to. Like, this is never over. I win, they fucking lose. That's how the world fucking works. Little fucking kikes. They get ruled by people like me. Little fucking octoroons. My ancestors fucking enslaved those pieces of fucking shit. I rule the fucking world. Those pieces of shit get ruled by people like me. They look up and see a face like mine looking down at them. That's how the fucking world works. We are gonna destroy this fucking town.
What I hope people get from watching this documentary is that there's two realities. There's the reality in which you think you live in, and then there's the reality that you actually live in. And a lot of times people want to use their better judgment or past experience or personal experience to really make a judgment call on what's going on in this country right now. And just let's think about the things that we know that are true. We know that the politicians lie to us. We know that. We all agree that there's a saying in America that all politicians lie. That needs to change right away. We need to know what the truth is. The second thing is we need to have a conversation about racism in this country, because what is going to happen is if the Ku Klux Klan, which I believe has infiltrated our government for quite some time, I don't think this is something new, and hopefully that this documentary proved that, but what I fear is going to happen next is you have racial division in this country. You also have mass unemployment. I think something like 47% of the American population is not working right now. You have a overbearing tyrant in the White House who has destroyed the public trust when it comes to media, elections, everything. He's just soiled, he's just ruined where democracy was heading. And I don't know if we can ever survive the reign of Donald Trump. But I wanted to make this documentary to let you know that what comes next is mass incarceration or genocide if the ideology of the right does not get extinguished. Because we keep trying to find middle ground with terrorists, and we have to realize that the Republican Party and the Ku Klux Klan are one and the same. And when you look at the platform of the GOP, it literally says they view humans as property. When people tell you who they are, you take it for what they are. And if you don't think for a second racists aren't in Congress, I'll leave this documentary with this. Stephen King was an outward bigot for 9 years in Congress. For 9 years, Mitch McConnell knew about him and did nothing. The entire Republican Party is complicit for not denouncing that racist for what he was and getting him out of politics. You've created tensions in this country based on racial division. You're going to get people to protest against it. The President of the United States wants to label American citizens terrorist groups based on their political ideologies. We have a mass incarceration problem in this country, and we also have billions of dollars invested into these prisons. If you don't think for a second they're going to use division racially to start locking up anybody who does not agree with them, this is the final play for the Ku Klux Klan. They have the media. It's owned by conservatives. They have the White House. It's owned by Donald. They have the Senate. They just appointed 300 judges. So don't think for a second that democracy is just forever. It can be gone in the blink of an eye. And I hope this documentary opens some eyes. Because the Ku Klux Klan is not meeting in the woods. They're meeting in boardrooms. And their final play is right here and right now. If you read the Ku Klux Klan manifesto, you compare it to the GOP platform, and then you just take the evidence that's right in front of you, you will see that the Ku Klux Klan is not to be fucked with, and it's time we start taking them serious. Republicans are racist because the Ku Klux Klan playbook is their playbook.
It is a sad day in our constitutional democracy when we are not able to have civil liberties like the First Amendment. That's what leads to rational discussion and ideas breaking down and people resorting to violence. Yesterday,
Speaker, I do so with a feeling of personal affection. We love him for the enemies he has made. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Fritz Kuhn. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Americans, American patriots, I'm sure I do not come before you tonight as a complete stranger. You all have heard of me through the Jewish-controlled press as a creature with horns, a cloven hoof, and a long tail. We, with American ideals, demand that our government shall be returned to the American people who founded it